Pokemon is a cheery kids game, right? Just a silly children's cartoon that you remember waking up the weekend to watch? Well, it's no secret that there is a dark side to this long-lasting series. From the ghost girl that stalks you, to the Tower of Death in the early games. Here's a list of the darkest Pokedex entries you may have missed. Introduced in Generation 5, Dano just looks like a cute little dinosaur at first glance. Nothing out of the ordinary for a kid's game. However, Dano's Pokedex entries reveal that it cannot see, so it bumps into things and bites them to figure out its surroundings. Some entries mention that it isn't a picky eater, and its description in Pokemon Black outright warns you not to approach it because of this. That's right, this blind dinosaur might bite you just because it can't see you, and then eat you because it doesn't care. But it gets worse. Dano's Pokedex entry in Pokemon White, X, and Omega Ruby add that their bodies are covered in wounds. Wounds from blindly bumping into things, or from being bitten by other Danos? Either way, it's a rough way to live. And don't expect evolution to save it. Its evolution, Zweilous, has two heads that don't get along and fight with each other over food. Zweilous then evolves into the three-headed Hydreigon, which eats anything in its path. Oh, and only one of the three heads has a brain. Dano's whole lifespan is pretty grim. Generation 3 added a cactus Pokemon called Cacnea, which evolves into Cacturne. So, what's disturbing about a cactus? During the day, Cacturne remains motionless like a real cactus to conserve moisture. At night, it goes on the hunt for food. A few of its Pokedex entries merely say it searches for prey, exhausted from the desert's heat. Sad for the prey, but fair enough for the predator. However, Pokemon Sapphire, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver, Y, and Alpha Sapphire go a step further. Cacturne's prey includes travelers, and it stalks them in packs. Imagine you're traveling through the desert when nightfall comes. There is a group of sentient cacti following you, waiting for you to stop for a rest so they can kill you and eat you. And death by cactus probably isn't a pleasant way to go. The Generation 3 Pokemon Snorunt has two evolution options, Glalie or Frostlass. Frostlass is somewhat disturbing itself, as its Pokedex entries reveal it secretly puts its defeated and frozen prey on display, but if it comes down to a choice between the two of them, you're probably better off as prey to Frostlass than to Glalie. Glalie has the power of ice, including the ability to freeze moisture in the air. According to its Pokedex entries in Pokemon Platinum, Black and White, and Black and White 2, it uses this technique to prevent prey from escaping. Being trapped by the air around you turning to ice is bad enough, but it gets much worse. According to Pokemon Sapphire and Alpha Sapphire, it uses ice to freeze and immobilize its prey, and then enjoys eating it in a leisurely fashion. Leisurely? Unless being frozen knocks out or kills the prey first, that sounds like a slow, painful death. At least the predators have a good reason for their actions. Then there's Gengar, brought to us by the first generation of Pokemon. This is just mean. Gengar imitates your shadow. Some Pokedex entries sound like it just wants to scare you. Others say it steals your heat to give you a strong chill. Pokemon Yellow, Platinum, Black and White, and Black and White 2 say Gengar casts curses on people. But the Pokedex entries in Silver, Fire Red, Pearl, and Soul Silver make it much clearer. Gengar is going to kill you. It slips into the target's shadow and silently waits for an opportunity to steal the life of its victim. Remember being stalked by a sentient cacti? At least you can get away. How do you escape your own shadow? In Generation 4, Misdreavus got an evolution for the first time. But while most of Miss Magius's Pokedex entries are no more sinister than those of its pre-evolved form, one takes a dark twist. All of its Pokedex entries have one thing in common. Miss Magius has a cry that either sounds like an incantation or is one. These cries are used to torment enemies, but it can also chant in a way imbued with happiness giving power. That doesn't sound too bad. It can use its incantations to either attack its enemies or help its friends. Unless you read the entry of Pokemon Diamond, that is, where anyone hearing Miss Magius's cry is tormented by headaches and hallucinations. A Pokemon that, just through its cry, causes headaches and hallucinations for anyone who hears? That's almost getting a little Lovecraftian. Honedge was added in Generation 6, and its design is simple. It's a sword with a blue cloth that extends from its hilt. Leaving aside whether or not a sword Pokemon is a good idea, which caused some controversy when it was unveiled, Honedge has both a disturbing past and future. Some Pokedex entries introduce the possibility that certain Pokemon were once human, an idea which probably stems back to the mythological yokai. Well, according to Pokemon X and Omega Ruby, Honedge is born when a departed spirit inhabits a sword. As if a possessed sword isn't cheery enough, it also attaches itself to people and drinks their life force. Pokemon Y and Alpha Sapphire make it worse. If someone mistakes Honedge for a regular sword and picks it up by its hilt, it'll wrap that blue cloth around their arm and drain that person's life energy completely. Lambent is the first evolution of Litwick, introduced in Generation 5. Litwick already has a dark theme, as it uses its light to lure people in, then steals their life force as a source of fuel. Lambent, however, realizes it's much easier to claim your dying spirits as its fuel. Its Pokedex entry in Pokemon Black says it searches cities for the spirits of the fallen, while White, Y, and Alpha Sapphire says it appears when someone is about to die and steals their spirit then. But in Pokemon White and Black 2, X, and Omega Ruby, Lambent has discovered the best source of such spirits. As such, it hangs around hospitals waiting for people to pass on. So, if someone is in a hospital dying, what do they have to look forward to? A peaceful end? Some form of afterlife? No, their spirit might become fuel for a malevolent lamp. Worst yet, Lambent evolves into Chandelure, and spirits burned by Chandelure lose their way and wander this world forever. These Pokemon don't kill you, they doom your soul. Compared to some of the Pokemon we've discussed already, Generation 3's Dusclops isn't too horrific in comparison. However, it earns bonus points because its Pokedex entries just can't decide how it's a twisted, nightmarish monstrosity. Is it just a hollow shell that pulls will-o-wisps into itself to form a ball of fire for unknown reasons, like Pokemon Emerald, Platinum, Black and White, and Black and White 2 suggest? Does it steal a spirit if you look inside it, like Pokemon Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and X say? Will it suck you into a void if you look inside it, as stated in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Y? Maybe it sucks everything inside it like a black hole when it opens its mouth, like Pokemon Emerald says. And maybe Pokemon Ruby and Omega Ruby are right that nothing will ever come back out. But what about Sapphire and Alpha Sapphire, which mention the ability to absorb anything, but also adds that it can hypnotize its foes and force them to do its bidding? Whether Dusclops is stealing your spirit, sucking you into an inescapable void, or taking over your mind, this is one Pokemon you don't want to cross. Generation 6 embraced the Halloween spirit with Pumpkaboo and its evolution Gourgeist, based on jack-o'-lanterns. As such, you might expect them to be harmless and innocent. Pumpkaboo, yes. Gourgeist, not even close. Gourgeist's Pokedex details don't actually go into a lot of detail about what it does. It wanders the streets and sings according to Pokemon X and Omega Ruby, and anyone who hears its song is cursed. This isn't out of line with many other Pokemon on this list, and seems much milder than the soul-stealing, life-draining stalker monsters we've looked at so far. However, most of those had a reason behind their actions. They're predators, they need fuel, or they cause negative effects through their very nature. According to Pokemon Y and Alpha Sapphire, Gourgeist enwraps its prey in its hair-like arms, and then sings joyfully as it observes the suffering of its prey. Joyfully. How Gourgeist intends to hurt you isn't clear, but this sadistic Pokemon will love every second of it. The top Pokemon on our list isn't a sadist, it isn't even a predator. It won't stalk you, curse you, or kill you. Nevertheless, it has the darkest Pokedex entry of all. Yamask, added to the series in Generation 5, is another Pokemon that used to be a human. It's a human spirit that rose from his or her grave. And Pokemon White, White 2 and Black 2, X and Omega Ruby assures us that it retains memories of its former life. Imagine being a Pokemon, knowing you were once human, and being unable to communicate with anyone. Instead, you'd be treated like a Pokemon, kept as a pet, sent into battle, traded between trainers. But human memories aren't enough to give it the darkest Pokedex entry. No, that honor goes to Pokemon Black, Y, and Alpha Sapphire, which explains why Yamask carries a mask. That mask used to be its face when it was human. Sometimes they look at it and cry. Yamask once was human. After death, it rose from the grave as a Pokemon. It carries its disembodied face around with it, and because it remembers its life as a human, it looks at its old face and cries. Between the tragedy of its existence and the nightmarish truth about its mask, Yamask has the #1 darkest Pokedex entry. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's list, and if you did, leave a like. And there are many dark Pokedex entries that aren't on this list, like Victory Bell and Shedinja. So if you have a personal favourite not on this list, leave it in the comments. And if you want to see another dark Pokemon list, click here for 5 Pokemon you should keep away from your kids. Or if you want to see a different list, click here for my 10 anticipated games that were cancelled.